Going once, going twice, okay, moving on. So under new business, remember we did have that amendment, but we will start with the Board of Education district goals. Would you like to take that?
Yep, so with the Board of Education goals, this is something that we actually talked about at our June 19th Board of Ed meeting when we had our Board of Ed retreat. So these are not unfamiliar to you, and then you've had a chance to look at them over the last couple of weeks. So at this point, I would think it would make sense to entertain a motion to pass through the Board of Education goals, including the district goals.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Board of Education goals for the 2019-2020 school year, including the district goals as presented.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay.
So let me start by stating my strong support for these goals. They are honorable goals for the Board of Education to adopt because they charge this district with putting the education of our students before anything else. And they very clearly affirm that student education is indeed the most important priority of the Plymouth educational system. I applaud the administration and the superintendent for putting it together, and I'm proud to be a part of a Board of Education that I assume will vote to adopt these goals. But I must attempt to express my thoughts on goal number 2, which is the social emotional learning standards. I am at best skeptical about such standards, and I would just like to explain why I'm hesitant to immediately support it. The need for social emotional learning is obvious and real. I acknowledge that. Schools have been engaging students in being better social creatures and more aware emotional beings ever since the American and I assume international school systems have existed. Teachers each have their unique ways of doing so, and that uniqueness in itself has always strengthened students' character and allowed various teachers in schools to implement trial and error to see what works and what doesn't. Admittedly, some teachers are better than others at this, just like some teachers are better than others at typical school education like math or science or anything else like that. However, I'm unconvinced that this program of SEL is the way to go. We compare all of our students, and I say our as in America's, not just Plymouth's, to the students of 60 or 70 years ago. If you were to ask which ones were more socially adept and more emotionally aware, I do think that the answer is obvious, that young people have gotten less socially adept and less emotionally aware over time. They just don't seem to have the same level of maturity in those areas, and it does seem to be getting worse. While I have opinions on why that's the case, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly why it's the case. It just is. And I understand the argument that SEL, in part, is that exactly, our students need this type of social and emotional learning now more than ever before. But I do think it's safe to say that we have more local and national SEL-like programs now than ever in our country. So I'm not sure it's a lack of social and emotional learning programs in our schools that are causing this continual generational decline in students being socially adept and emotionally self-aware. We need to continue to have schools and teachers to engage in social emotional learning, just as they've been for a very long time. I'm just not convinced that they need or are benefited by this specific framework to do so. I have to go back to my fundamental beliefs, many of which have been very influenced by educators. It's not that schools need more guidelines for how to handle kids, but rather more freedom to do so. They need to be trusted to find out what works and what doesn't. I wanted to take the time to articulate myself here because I don't want it to be assumed that I'm completely against the proposed district goals. I am not. As I stated earlier, I fully and proudly support them. And I don't always want it to be assumed that I'm completely against social and emotional learning, because I do think it is and always has been an integral part of the classroom. However, I also remain concerned about the SEL standards, as I would about any attempt to suggest a definitive right way to educate students in social adeptness and emotional self-awareness. That being said, I would like to offer an amendment to the goals, regardless of whether this amendment passes or not. Like I said earlier, I will be voting proudly in favor of the district goals because there's too much good in them for me to justify voting down the entire proposal wholesale. And I do believe that as a whole, these goals do continue to move Plymouth in the right direction in educating our students. However, I would still like to provide the following option. I move to amend the document to remove goal number 2, social emotional learning, from the district goals.
I have a question for you.
Wait, please.
Oh, okay.
He has to get a second first.
Why
Second.
not?
Jerry's giving a second.
And then we have
Okay,
discussion.
now we discuss it.
Okay, I have a question. Do you not support emotional health with students?
So, as I just explained, emotional health has been I just want to understand your question. Do I not support emotional health?
Yes,
Could you rephrase it?
this is what the social emotional learning goal is. It's part of emotional health. Do you not support emotional health with children? It's a yes or no.
I honestly don't understand the question of do I
Can you
not
help me out?
support emotional health?
He's saying he supports SEL learning.
Yeah.
However, he's not in favor of the way it's being presented to teachers having to follow the same guidelines. Am I correct in that, Josiah?
That is a pretty accurate representation of it. It's not only I support emotional learning for kids. It has been a reality for as far as I'm aware that the American school system has been in existence. I think if I ask any teacher about what they do when they teach, I don't think any of them would say they just walk in, say 1 + 1 is 2. Here's your test, get out. That's not generally how teachers teach, and I'm aware of that. They have to actually teach kids how to be good in society, how to be good social
So is it accurate
creatures.
to say that you maybe would want it to be a more organic thing that just sort of happens in a classroom as it happens?
I think that would be a very accurate way to put it. And I'm not saying this.
No,
isn't.
I just want to understand it. That's
I think that's accurate. I'm not saying this isn't that either. I'm just skeptical about that because of where it came from. It's another national program. I'm just generally suspicious about those types of things as a general matter.
Just to reiterate, though, the SEL that we're doing here is not a program. You actually mentioned it, too. You said the framework. So you call it a program, then you called it a framework later in what you were saying. It is a framework. It's a way of thinking about how to improve these types of skills in students. So it's not like we're not buying anything off a shelf and just telling teachers this is what you need to do. We actually have administrators and teachers all working organically together to talk about how do we do this best. And as we learn each year, we constantly revise our plan. We actually have a district-wide committee whose main goal is to continue to talk about this and how to make it better. So we will continue to use the best practices from our teachers and what the administrators and teachers are seeing to improve our processes around this, just like we do for math, just like we do for reading. So it's not just, I don't want people to think it's a canned program we bought. CASTLE is a framework, which is a national framework that talks about building these skills. Ruler is also a framework through Yale that breaks it down into an easy to understand kind of framework. So I think it does have those components of organic and getting information from the teachers, because they're the ones working with the students day in, day out. We absolutely want to know what's working, what's not, and we don't profess to say that we've got the silver bullet here. But we think it's a great goal. We know that we want to continue to develop these skills, and so we may not be as far off from being in agreement on this. I just think it's important to recognize it as a framework and not a canned program.
I also just want to add, too, that I commend this district for doing exactly what the framework suggests, which is starting with adults. You start with adults, you teach the adults, and you have conversations with the adults about what this looks like, about how it can be implemented, about the ideas and the structures and things like that. And then it is sort of like, once the adults have a grasp on it, it's much more easy for them to present it in a way that is organic, that is just part of the culture of the school. Not all districts are doing that, just so you know.
Well, to build on that, Karen, I think the adults need to, and I think I know where Josiah is going at, when he references back to like 50, 60 years ago. Social emotional learning really came from mom and dad.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
you know,
You're not wrong in
maybe
anything
the
you're saying.
adults that we need to be touching in social emotional learning. I'm not the teachers and, you know, those adults. We need to talk to the adults.
Yeah,
That I haven't
unfortunately, we
used.
don't have control
Yes,
over
I know, I
that.
understand that, Karen. You know,
Yeah.
it's tough to do. I mean, hopefully that when you do this social emotional learning with these kids, they take that learning experience, and then when they become adults and they
Right,
have
that's the
kids,
point.
then they
There you
understand
go.
where
That's
the
the
social
point.
emotional learning
Ding,
comes
ding,
from,
ding.
because for some reason, you got lost in the traffic, you know, from one generation to another, so.
But, I think everyone here and any person truly can continue to develop these skills. Like everyone, if they think they're emotionally intelligent, it's just like any kind of learning. It's a skill that can continuously get developed. So all of us are along some phase of that, and we have to work to do in different places. So some of our parents are in great places, and some may need more support. And so, but we want to have students who come out with these skills that you were just saying. We want to try to build that more in them. Because they even say, reading and math will help you get the job. Emotional intelligence will help you not just get the job, but keep the job and potentially even be a leader in that field. So, support what Jerry's saying.
I understand where you're coming from too. I completely understand what you're saying.
Anybody else have any comments for the amendment before I call for the vote of the amendment? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
It has failed. So do we have any more discussion? Let's get back to the original motion. Is there any more discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't understand. I honestly don't understand that. Can you?
No.
Okay. Any abstentions? All right, motion has passed.